Hey y'all, Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. We have record numbers getting into the homestead and farming space. Today we're going to provide you with 3 really helpful tips that really helps everybody no matter where you are in that continuum. And so with that said, let's just get to it. Tip number 1, don't be afraid to start small. One of the biggest problems we see out there, and anybody that's been in this space has almost certainly made that mistake, I know that we have, and that's thinking you can do more in the area than you think you can. And then what you find out is that, let's say you do get a harvest. Let's say you turned over that soil and you do get a harvest. Now you're dealing with the other end of it that almost nobody ever talks about, and that is what to do with the harvest. So you may be overwhelmed with one thing, and then half of it goes bad because you put in way more than you should. Or the other end of that spectrum is you plant a bunch of stuff out there, gets choked out by weeds, and now you're thinking, okay, gardening isn't for me. Homesteading isn't for me. That's one of the biggest things that really can crush your success right off the bat. It applies with everything all across the board. Another thing right off the bat is, let's say you go out there, you're living in a city or a suburb, you go out and buy 50 acres, and you think you need to develop all 50 acres. Remember, this is why we teach you in permaculture zones. You got zone 1, or basically zone 0, all the way out to zone 5. Don't be working in zone 5, which is basically wilderness, when really the area where you spend your most time is going to be right there in that house, which is your zone 0. Then think about, what are you going to do on the porch? Then what are you going to do right off the front porch? Then down your driveway or the areas you park, the areas you spend the most time. That's where you want to put your most effort. That's where you want to concentrate things. Work closest to the area where you live. As you develop it, as you get more skills, work your way out. Now, just a little cautionary tale that really has nothing to do with point number 1. Be extremely careful who you team up with when you do any of this stuff. A mistake that we have made more than once. Don't get out there thinking, oh, all these people are in it with me. They're going to help out. Well, there was once a ghetto philosopher that once said, I got me some Seagram's gin. Everybody got their cups, but they ain't chipped in. Yeah, that happens more than you know. They're more polished than spit and more glitter than grit. You dig what I'm saying? Let's move on to number 2. Before we get into tip number 2, I want to remind you, Monday night, going to be going live, and you're going to want to be there. I'm day number 3 of a 3-day fast. We're going to go about that in great detail. So, tip number 2, let's talk about perennials. Now, you can get yourself so much further ahead if you put a higher emphasis on perennials right from the outset. So, Michelle, what are we looking at over here?
So, in this section alone, we've got at least 4 perennials. We've got bee balm, we've got perennial kale, a couple different varieties. Here's another variety. We've got walking onions, and then we've got comfrey. And borage isn't necessarily a perennial, but it reseeds itself, and then it comes back again next year. And we've also got down here, it's a little crowded out, but we've got lavender down here also. So I guess that's like 5 perennials.
Yeah, so
just
right there,
in this one space.
In addition to that, y'all, remember, we talk about all the things this is comfrey that we just harvested a little bit ago, so it's coming back. But once again, that's one of our most valuable things we grow that we don't necessarily eat. So it's not just the perennials that are going to be something that you can eat. It's also the things that your animals and frankly your bees can eat, because they spend a fair amount of time over here in the bee balm. It looks beautiful too. We got some other stuff back there, the borage. I mean, look at these beautiful little flowers here. And there's a whole lot of microbial stuff that happens in there. Another cool thing with your perennials, we got a peach, okay? Now, I want to say this as a cautionary tale. Be mindful. I'm not telling you to just go in there and rush and do this. There's a fair amount of observation. And in fact, most permaculture designers will tell you to wait a year before you do anything. Okay, I'll leave that up to you as to where you want to do it, because the clock is ticking regarding certain things going on in this world. But you want to think about these things and think about how quickly you can put them in, and don't make that tragic mistake. And believe me, this has happened more than once, where people put in trees and then think, oh shoot, should have put in some swales, and then they want to put it on the back end. Pretty tough to do. So you want to think these things out, you want to plan them, but think about those perennial crops. Look, if you can't do nothing else, if you were to put in trees, put in your comfrey, which by the way, we sell at the website, you want to put in all the gild around your trees, you can get that far. And we've talked about this. We got tons of videos on how to do that. But think of those perennial crops because they're going to save you a lot of time and effort, and they just make you more efficient at the end of the day. Let's talk about number 3, and it's probably one of the most consequential and the biggest problem we see, and that's in terms of animals. Look, I'm not going to kid you. I know what the world looks like, and I know where it's going, and I know what's happening. So a lot of people getting into this space feel the high compulsion to go out there and get as many animals as you possibly can. Well, what are you doing? You're doing more harm than good, because I said before, and I'll say it again, and some people were kind of hard on me about that. You can take it any way you want, but homesteaders can either be the best thing in the world or you're the worst thing in the world. Case in point is right over there. Probably 80% of those trees had to come out because the homesteaders that lived here before us had enormous numbers of cows out here, destroying, raping the land, feeding their cows and sheep and everything else they had out here hay nearly all year long, because, you know, generally as Americans or wherever you are in the Western culture, we tend to know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Meaning those cows and the money and the food and everything else they were getting was more than the value of the land that they were destroying. You dig? So the point being, when you start out in this space, you're going to be filled with wide varieties of wonder. You're going to want to do this. You're going to want to do that. Let me encourage you right off the bat. Start with the gateway drug of animals, and that's chickens. They're right over there. They follow after the sheep. The sheep go through, do their thing. You're going to feel compelled to want to start off with sheep, cows, whatever the case may be, even goats, if you're a masochist. But I encourage you, start off with something very small. Become the expert on your property with that animal before you move on to anything else. Okay, so you're running chickens. Get used to rotationally grazing those. Then maybe when you feel like you got a good handle on it, try our chicken tractor on steroids. We got an entire playlist on how to do that. Master that, because at the same time, it's going to give you at least a conversational understanding of compost. Work with the chickens. Maybe you want to consider rabbits. Think about how they work in your landscape. Think about the compost you make with them. Think about how they regenerate soil. Understand the base components. Ask any basketball player that works in the pro realm. I don't remember which one said it, because I don't really watch sports, but he was like, all we do is perfect the basics. Perfect the basics. That's what you want to do. So don't go out there, get cows, chickens, pigs, blah, 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 blah. Don't do all that. Also, think of those other animals that once you feel like you master that, maybe you want a ruminant. Maybe you want pigs, because I'm here to tell you, I don't know if anybody else will agree with me, pigs are easier to manage than even chickens once you know what you're doing. It's not that difficult, so don't be afraid to use them in the areas where they can and should be used, like in Glenn's, in that silvopasture area we're creating over there. All right, y'all, those are just 3. I could probably do a soliloquy right now for at least 2 hours long of all the do's and don'ts in this, but these are 3 big tips that you can apply right now. In fact, we'll do more of these videos for all the people that are getting into that homestead space. If anybody wants to know, we're doing a really awesome series over there on Patreon regarding our how we're going through making this compost with an entirely different method and the incredible, unbelievable results we're having. You can find us over there. Till next time, y'all. Like I said, I mentioned it earlier, if you need comfrey, bone sauce, world's best deer repellent. It isn't a panacea, but it's the best you can find out there. Go check us out at the website. Homestead, freeze dryers, we got them down below. EMP shield, whatever you need. Look, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm, where permaculture is my passion. We'll see y'all next time.